Self-acceptance, the key to inner peace, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something that lives at the very core of our well-being, something that many chase for years, often looking outward when the answer lies within. I'm talking about self-acceptance, the key, the foundation, the doorway to inner peace. We live in a world that often rewards perfection, flawless appearances, seamless achievements, and spotless records. From an early age, we're taught to aim high, to win, to get things right the first time. While there's nothing wrong with striving for excellence, the constant pressure to be perfect can become a heavy burden. It creates a false belief that if we're not flawless, we're not enough. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion, and chasing it only distances us from our most authentic selves. Embracing imperfection is not about lowering our standards. It's about accepting our humanity and recognizing the beauty in our flaws. Imperfection is what makes us real. It's in the stumbles, the awkward moments, and the things we wish we'd done differently. Every person you admire has had failures, doubts, and regrets. Yet somehow we tend to hold ourselves to a different standard. We believe that if we make a mistake, we failed in a deeper way. We believe that if we have flaws, we must hide them. But imperfection is not weakness, it's part of the shared human experience. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we open the door to genuine connection. Others don't relate to our masks, they relate to our realness. By embracing imperfection, we release the exhausting need to prove ourselves. We stop editing who we are just to fit in. We stop silencing parts of ourselves out of fear of judgment. And most importantly, we give ourselves permission to grow. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones or under the weight of unrealistic expectations. It happens in the mess, in the trying, failing, learning, and trying again. When we stop expecting ourselves to have it all together, we begin to feel safe enough to evolve. Self-acceptance begins with a simple yet powerful act, acknowledging that we are a work in progress. Not broken, not lacking, just in progress. This mindset shifts everything. Instead of criticizing ourselves for not being perfect, we start to appreciate the effort we're making. We become more patient with our journey and more compassionate with our mistakes. This doesn't mean we stop caring or give up on improvement. It means we change the energy behind it. We strive to grow not because we think we're unworthy, but because we value ourselves enough to evolve. When we embrace imperfection, we also become more forgiving, not only of ourselves, but of others. We stop expecting people to be perfect and start seeing them with softer eyes. We realize everyone is carrying their own struggles, their own fears, their own scars. This awareness deepens our empathy and builds more authentic, loving relationships. In the end, imperfection is not something to fix. It's something to accept. It's the crack where the light enters. It's the part of us that keeps us grounded, humble, and beautifully human. And in that acceptance, we find peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because we finally made peace with the fact that it doesn't have to be. Comparison is one of the most deeply ingrained habits we carry, often without even realizing it. It sneaks into our thoughts when we scroll through social media, when we hear about someone else's success, or when we measure our lives against timelines we think we should be following. We compare appearances, achievements, relationships, and even happiness. The problem with comparison is that it never gives us the full picture, only carefully selected highlights, and yet we judge our behind the scenes against someone else's best moments, often concluding that we fall short. Letting go of comparison is not easy, but it is essential if we want to experience real self-acceptance and peace. At its core, comparison implies that there is a right way to be, a perfect life to live, and a single definition of success. But life is not a race or a checklist. We all have different journeys shaped by different circumstances, choices, and challenges. What works for someone else may not be right for us, and that's okay. When we let go of comparison, we begin to appreciate the unique path we're on. We stop trying to live someone else's life and start showing up fully in our own. Comparison can be especially damaging because it often leads to self-doubt and envy. We begin to question our worth based on how we stack up against others. We may start to believe we're not doing enough, not progressing fast enough, or not good enough. These thoughts steal our joy and distract us from everything we've already achieved. They make us forget how far we've come. Letting go of comparison means shifting the focus inward. Instead of asking, why am I not like them? We start asking, what do I truly want, and what does success look like for me? When we let go of comparison, we also start to recognize our own value more clearly. We understand that someone else's beauty does not take away from our own. Someone else's success does not diminish ours. Someone else's happiness is not a threat. It's simply a reflection of what's possible. This shift allows us to celebrate others without resenting them and to be inspired rather than discouraged. One of the most freeing realizations is this: you are not supposed to be anyone else. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you are meant to be. Trusting this truth takes courage, especially in a world that constantly encourages competition. But inner peace doesn't come from winning or being the best. It comes from knowing who you are and being content with that. Letting go of comparison doesn't mean you stop striving for more. It means you start striving from a place of self-worth, not from insecurity. It means recognizing your journey as valid, your timing as perfect, and your life as valuable. The moment you release the need to measure yourself against others is the moment you begin to fully embrace yourself. And in that space, peace begins to grow. Self-worth is often misunderstood in today's world. We're taught directly or indirectly that our value is tied to our achievements, our appearance, our productivity, or the approval we get from others. It becomes a scorecard that we're constantly updating, hoping to earn enough points to feel good about ourselves. But true self-worth isn't something we gain through external validation. It's something we recognize and embrace from within. Redefining self-worth means breaking free from the belief that we need to prove ourselves to be worthy. It means understanding that we are already enough, just as we are. From a young age, many of us are conditioned to equate our value with what we do rather than who we are. Good grades, compliments, promotions, likes on social media. These become signals that we are doing well. We may feel like failures, not because we've done something wrong, but because we've learned to base our self-worth on how the world responds to us. This mindset is fragile. It makes our sense of self dependent on things we can't always control. Redefining self-worth requires us to shift our focus inward. Instead of asking, what have I done to earn love or respect, we begin asking, do I see myself as deserving of love and respect, simply for being me? It's a powerful shift. It means no longer tying our worth to our productivity, our appearance, or our status. It means believing that our existence alone is enough reason to be valued. This kind of self-worth is steady, unshaken by mistakes or set. It becomes a solid foundation from which we can grow, heal, and thrive. When we embrace unconditional self-worth, we give ourselves permission to be human. We understand that failure doesn't make us unworthy, that not having it all figured out doesn't make us any less valuable. We allow ourselves to rest without guilt, to say no without shame, and to show up authentically without fear of rejection. We begin to honor our needs and our boundaries because we recognize that we matter, not because of what we do, but because of who we are. This new understanding of self-worth also transforms the way we treat others. When we stop viewing worth as something that must be earned, we become more compassionate and less judgmental. We see others not as competitors, but as fellow humans, flawed, growing, and worthy in their own right. Our relationships deepen because they're no longer based on performance or image, but on real connection. Redefining self-worth is a journey. It means unlearning years of messages that told us we had to be more, do more, or look a certain way to be valuable. But once we make this shift, everything changes. We stop chasing approval and start living with purpose. We begin to trust ourselves, treat ourselves with kindness, and to feel at peace in our own skin. Because real self-worth isn't about proving you're enough. It's about knowing you always have been. The way we speak to ourselves shapes how we experience life. Our inner voice is a constant companion, quietly narrating our successes, our failures, our doubts, and our dreams. Yet for many of us, that voice is far more critical than it is kind. It points out our flaws, reminds us of our mistakes, and holds us to impossible standards. Over time, this internal dialogue can wear us down, drain our confidence, and distort the way we see ourselves. Speaking kindly to yourself is not just about feeling good, it's about healing, growing, and creating a more peaceful, accepting relationship with who you are. We often don't realize how harsh our self-talk really is. If we stopped and wrote down the things we silently say to ourselves, like, "I'm such a failure, I'll never be good enough," or "why do I always mess things up?" we'd be shocked by the cruelty. Worse yet, we probably never say such things to someone we love. So why do we allow ourselves to speak that way inside our own minds? The truth is, many of us learned to be self-critical because we thought it would push us to improve. We believed that being hard on ourselves would keep us motivated and prevent us from making mistakes. But in reality, harsh self-talk doesn't inspire growth. It creates fear, shame, and self-doubt. Speaking kindly to yourself means becoming aware of your inner voice and gently shifting it toward compassion. It means challenging those critical thoughts and replacing them with words that are supportive, realistic, and forgiving. When you mess up, instead of saying, "I'm such an idiot," try, "It's okay. I made a mistake and I can learn from it." When you're feeling down, instead of thinking, "I shouldn't feel like this," try, "It's okay to feel this way. I'm doing the best I can." These small changes might seem simple, but they can have a profound impact on how you feel and how you move through life. Being kind to yourself doesn't mean ignoring your flaws or pretending everything is perfect. It means accepting your imperfections with grace and recognizing that being human means being imperfect. It's about holding yourself accountable without tearing yourself down. It's about encouraging yourself the way you would encourage a friend, gently, lovingly, and with belief in your potential. Over time, kind self-talk becomes a habit. It becomes the voice that lifts you up when you're struggling, that calms your anxiety when things go wrong, and that reminds you of your worth when you forget. It helps build resilience because when the world feels heavy, you know you can rely on your own voice to be a source of comfort rather than criticism. We all deserve to feel safe within our own minds. We all deserve to be spoken to with respect, especially by ourselves. So the next time you catch yourself being harsh, pause, take a breath, and choose kindness, because how you speak to yourself matters, and you are worth speaking to with love. Every person has a story, one made up of triumphs and failures, joy and heartbreak, clarity and confusion. Some parts of our story we're proud of, while others we may try to hide, rewrite, or forget altogether. But the truth is, every chapter, no matter how messy or painful, has shaped who we are today. Owning your story means acknowledging every part of your journey with honesty and courage. It means choosing to stand in your truth rather than run from it, and realizing that your story is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to be embraced. We live in a world that often encourages us to filter our lives. We highlight the good, polish the surface, and push the darker, harder moments into the background. But the parts we hide are often the ones that hold the most power. They contain the lessons we've learned, the strength we've built, and the resilience we didn't know we had. When we disown those parts, we disconnect from the fullness of who we are. But when we own our story fully, honestly, we begin to reclaim that power. Owning your story doesn't mean being defined by your past. It means understanding that your past is part of your foundation, not your limitation. It's about saying, yes, this happened. Yes, I've struggled. And yes, I'm still standing. This kind of self-acknowledgement is incredibly empowering. It turns pain into purpose. It allows you to move forward without pretending or performing, and instead live from a place of truth and authenticity. There is great freedom in no longer needing to hide who you've been or what you've gone through. When you own your story, shame begins to lose its grip. Secrets no longer weigh you down. You become more open, more grounded, and more compassionate toward yourself and others. You realize that everyone has their own struggles, their own regrets, and their own path to healing. Your story, with all its complexities, becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. It also gives you control over your narrative. When you own your story, you get to decide how it's told, not through the lens of fear, regret, or judgment, but through the lens of growth, healing, and self-respect. You are no longer a passive character in your life. You become the author. You choose what meaning your experiences hold and what lessons you carry forward. And as you begin to own your story, you give others permission to do the same. Your courage creates space for others to speak their truths, to show up more fully, and to feel less alone. Vulnerability becomes a strength, not a weakness. It fosters connection, authenticity, and healing. Owning your story is not a one-time decision. It's a practice, a daily act of self-acceptance, but with each day, it gets easier. You begin to hold your head higher, not because your story is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. It's yours, and that alone makes it powerful. Growth is a natural and beautiful part of being human. We are constantly evolving, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, shaped by our experiences, our choices, and the lessons life teaches us along the way. But for growth to truly happen, we must first create the space for it. That space isn't just physical or external. It's emotional, mental, and internal. It begins with the way we treat ourselves, the expectations we hold, and the grace we give ourselves to be in progress rather than demanding perfection. Many of us carry the weight of unrealistic expectations. We think we should already have everything figured out, that we should be further ahead, or that we should never make the same mistake twice. This mindset can be suffocating. It leaves little room for trial and error, for learning, or for evolving at our own pace. Creating space for growth means letting go of the belief that we have to be perfect right now. It means allowing ourselves to be beginners, to make missteps, and to move forward with compassion instead of criticism. Growth thrives in environments where we feel safe to try, safe to fail, and safe to get back up again. That safety begins with us. When we judge ourselves harshly for every mistake or fall into the trap of negative self-talk, we create an inner world that stifles change. But when we respond to challenges with patience and curiosity, we foster a mindset that encourages progress. We begin to see setbacks not as signs of failure, but as necessary parts of the journey. Creating space for growth also means slowing down. In a world that glorifies hustle, speed, and constant productivity, pausing can feel uncomfortable. But growth doesn't always happen in motion. It often happens in the stillness, in the reflection, in the quiet moments where we listen to ourselves. We start to hear our true needs, to understand what's working and what isn't, and to make more intentional choices moving forward. Another key part of growth is self-forgiveness. We cannot evolve if we are constantly punishing ourselves for who we were. We must be willing to let go of guilt, release the past, and meet ourselves where we are now. That doesn't mean forgetting what we've done or avoiding responsibility. It means recognizing that we are not our worst moments. We are capable of learning and becoming better versions of ourselves. And perhaps most importantly, creating space for growth means honoring our own timing. We don't have to keep pace with anyone else's journey. We're not falling behind if we're moving more slowly or taking a different path. Growth is deeply personal. It's not a race. It's a process that unfolds in its own time, in its own way. When we give ourselves that space to be human, to be imperfect, to be evolving, we begin to grow not from a place of pressure or inadequacy, but from love. And growth that comes from love is always more lasting, more meaningful, and more peaceful. 4.